I always find it very helpful to start with maybe a 30-second elevator pitch about Bahrain for those that are not familiar with the country. Bahrain is a small island, part of the Gulf Cooperation Council. As a country, historically, it's been a strategic maritime state. So it was always considered as a transit, as a hub, as a gateway to the region, and a transit for trade going east and west. And that's also started because of the pearling industry in Bahrain. But fast forward till today, we still retain that role, and that really underpins our ethos or our DNA of being business friendly. And when you look at our economy today, people think Bahrain, it's an oil exporting country. In reality and on the ground, our GDP is 85% non-oil. Financial services sector is the largest contributor to our economy, followed by manufacturing. But our other strategic sectors that we focus on are tourism, logistics, technology, but also we have the education and the healthcare. So you can see that diversification was achieved through attracting investment into the country, being very open, allowing investors to come and take advantage of the region and what's happening, and using Bahrain as their testing ground, as their base. So it's been really interesting time, especially with the growth that is happening in the region at the moment.
Well, you're in our Los Angeles bureau now, ostensibly in Los Angeles to help attract investment to the country. Can you talk a little bit about who you're meeting with, the type of investment that you're hoping to attract?
It's been a variety, actually, of companies and sectors that we've had conversations with. And I have to say, it's been very, very interesting. We've always, in Bahrain, admired specifically the technology sector of the US, and having direct conversations with their innovators, with the founders, with the people that are really close to not just what's happening at the moment and what consumers have, but really also what is expected to come going forward. So a lot of discussions about technology and how Bahrain can support that. But also we've had discussions on manufacturing, we've had discussions even on the film industry. And we do that, and the way we look at Bahrain and the way we're able to talk about those different industries is because when we assess our market in Bahrain, we look at various things. We look at what is the infrastructure that I have at the moment, what are the regulations that I have, what is the human capital that I have, and how can that serve international companies in various sectors, and what would be beneficial for them to come and take advantage of the business environment.
Is it a difficult thing to do in a world that is increasingly going, I don't want to say the world's going America first, but countries are increasingly looking inward? You mentioned the film industry and meetings that you're having out there. Just this week, the president said he's imposing a 100% tariff on foreign-made movies. How much more difficult does that make your job trying to attract those folks to Bahrain?
Look, we acknowledge and we see what President Trump is doing in terms of attracting more local investments. And actually, if you look at the region, Bahrain and the rest of the GCC, we actually mirror that sentiment. A lot of the countries are trying to bring in investments into the region. But we also believe it's not a zero-sum game. Some companies would need to have presence in both regions, not necessarily just one, in order to achieve the results that they want even locally here in the US. And we're talking to some of those companies that need the input. Other companies actually need to be closer by nature to their consumers, and giving the growth in the demand and the growth in the consumer base in the Middle East and specifically the GCC, a lot of the companies would need that presence closer to the consumer. So we're having a lot of conversations with companies about that, but we very much understand what is happening here in the US, and we try to do our best in Bahrain to support those companies. The first thing we do with companies is ask, what are your growth plans? What are your strategies? How can we support you in the region? And what can Bahrain do for you? Because we honestly believe that their success means our success. So their success in the region means they will stay here for the foreseeable future, which means they become part of our ecosystem and part of our economic development.
Your Excellency, I'm curious too, what's the competitive landscape as you vie for investments in capital? I mean,
yes,
your country versus other Gulf nations, they've got similar ambitions. We report about it all the time. So what is that competitive landscape like?
First of all, it's absolutely exciting to see all of the countries having their Vision 2030s, Vision 2050s, really focusing on economic development. And the region really has complementary economies. Certainly for Bahrain, the way we see ourselves and view ourselves is it's an economy that complements what is happening in the rest of the region. We very much look at what's happening, and we invite companies to come and use Bahrain as a base to test those concepts and those ideas that they have. Again, it's a small country. You can do a countrywide rollout really easily. But also we always look at our competitive advantage. For us, cost competitiveness is really important. We continue to monitor how much it costs, not just to set up your business, but also if you're moving people internationally, how much does it cost for them to live there, to put their kids in school, to use the health system in Bahrain. The other thing that we have is connectivity. So speaking of the US, we have a free trade agreement with the US. We have this CEPA agreement, but also we have free trade agreements and investment agreements with about 30% of the world GDP, because as a small country, we have to make sure that companies can reach a wider consumer base. But we also, what's really important for us is that we work very closely with the private sector. So the government and the private sector works as one unit in Bahrain, and we have that ethos of the Team Bahrain concept. And as I said, we always start with, what do you need and how can I support you? And we have examples of where we've introduced a new legislation or a new regulation in response to a request by the private sector. Maybe AWS is a great example in that case, because they've said, what can you do for us in terms of the regulation? And we said, how about data jurisdiction law, where the data hosted in Bahrain is treated as an embassy? So me as a Bahraini, I cannot access that data, and it actually could only be accessed by a US court request.
You mentioned Amazon, and I'm looking at a report coming from Mordor Intelligence. It talks about some of the biggest tech companies in Bahrain. Oracle, Amazon, IBM, Microsoft are among them. Here in the US, we've been thinking a lot about immigration with regard to the H-1B visa issues that have come up in recent weeks, and the confusion here in the US about that. And I think one piece of the conversation that has been lost is certainly the US wants to make sure that it employs or that companies are paying for, it sounds like, paying for these visas. Is there an opportunity for Bahrain to come in and take some of that talent that could work at a US tech company that would be from outside of the US and instead work at a US tech company in Bahrain?
As I've said, our human capital for us is really, really important. So we not only invest in the human capital in Bahrain, and we have a lot of programs, we subsidize training for Bahrainis, but it's also very important to us as a country and an economy to bring in international talent. So a few years back, coming out of COVID, as part of our economic recovery plan, we've launched our Golden Residency program, which allows investors, retirees, entrepreneurs, talent to come in Bahrain, stay for an extended period of time. It's 10 years renewable automatically for them and their families. And that allows a lot of international companies, should they wish to do that, but also a lot of individuals to move their people into Bahrain and take advantage of not just the program, but also all of the other business benefits that you get by being in Bahrain.
Hey, one of the things I want to ask, and I know high tech and technology is certainly of interest, and I'm just curious, when it comes to big AI data centers, I mean, as you would imagine, Your Excellency, we spend so much time talking about the build out, the investments, the money flowing into anything and everything data. Curious if you guys, if the country and your office are considering backing AI data centers, such as what we've seen in Qatar, that they've done with Blue Owl.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important. I mean, it's coming. It's not. It's already there. So we've had AWS set up the first hyperscale data center in the Middle East in Bahrain a few years back. And again, as I mentioned, the reason they chose Bahrain is because of the regulation, but also the strength of the human capital. You mentioned Oracle, but we also have some regional and local investments for data centers. So we're definitely seeing growth in that region, where international companies that wish to use that and take advantage could come and plug and play and take advantage of the data centers already available. But really, because of the demand, there's a lot of potential and opportunities for companies that still wish to have data centers in the region to come also and take advantage of that.
So I am curious, you sound very optimistic. What's the biggest hurdle, obstacle right now in you attracting further investment? What's the thing that's difficult in terms of what you do?
I wouldn't say difficult, but we have to have a lot of conversations to explain the business environment, talk about the characteristics, what makes us different. But it's all very, very exciting, so we don't mind that at all.
And I also do think about, something that's certainly been front and front of mind for us, excuse me, and certainly coming off the UN General Assembly and watching the turmoil that we've seen in the region. How important is that to the folks that you're talking, whether it's companies, big name companies that we know, other investors in terms of investing? Obviously, not every kingdom or area within the Middle East is the same, but the turmoil and certainly the war that we've seen between Israel and Hamas, how much of that, the political situation, sometimes slows things down?
You absolutely need safety and stability for companies to thrive, for the economy to grow. And for us in Bahrain and the region as a whole, we've always advocated for peace. We've always played a part on a regional level, on an international level, to advocate for peace and stability. And we continue to do that. At the same time, the countries are very much focused on their economic strategies, economic plans, and we continue to have conversations with companies. And for those that have any doubt, we just say, come and talk to us. We will show you, we will explain to you the current business environment. But we are blessed to have a very stable and a safe business environment in Bahrain.
I have one last question too, and I'm just curious, when you do have questions with investors, obviously well-known companies, big companies, I'm sure folks do their homework, but what is the thing that you think they don't really understand about Bahrain and in terms of the economy and what you guys are doing?
I think how diversified the economy is something probably people do not realize. Mm-hmm. And given the journey, we've had a long journey of reform. Our journey in reform and in achieving the diversification that we've achieved today, with 85% of the economy being non-oil, with a large manufacturing sector, a large financial services sector, and others as well, is something people do not realize. And what that means is, for years and years, for decades, we've built knowledge and know-how in our people, in our infrastructure, in our regulation, in the way we do business, in the way we work with the private sector as well. So that's something that I think always surprises people when we talk to them.